Welcome, everyone. We'll get started with the planning meeting this evening. I'm Liz Schell, Chair of Planning Committee. We have our councillors here this evening, Councillor Osanek, Vice Chair Councillor Neal, Councillor McLaren, Councillor Turner, and Councillor Allen. And we have a number of staff here. I'll start on this side. Planner Bolton, Manager Newman, Planner Sands, Manager Forfar, and just behind is Planner Adams, and our Director of Planning is just outside on the phone. So I will now read, and our clerk, Heather Woodlands. So welcome, everyone. I'm going to read the public meeting introduction. We have some public meetings this evening. Notice of collection. Personal information collected as a result of this public hearing and on the forms provided at the back of the room is collected under the authority of the Planning Act and will be used to assist in making a decision on this matter. All names, addresses, opinions, and comments may be collected and may form part of the minutes, which will be available to the public. Questions regarding the collection should be forwarded to the Director of Planning, Building and Licensing Services. The purpose of public meetings is to present planning applications in a public forum as required by the Planning Act. Following presentations by the applicant, committee members will be afforded an opportunity to ask questions for clarification or further information. The meeting will then be opened to the public for comments and questions. Interested persons are requested to give their name and address for recording in the minutes. There is also a sign-in sheet for interested members of the public at the back of the room. No decisions are made at public meetings concerning applications unless otherwise noted. The public meeting is held to gather public opinion. Exemption to this rule is outlined in bylaw number 2006-75 to delegate various planning approvals to staff and to adopt certain procedures for the processing of planning applications subject to delegated authority. Council has authorized staff to use discretion in determining if an application can be a combined public meeting comprehensive report to expedite the approval process. Information gathered at public meetings is then referred back to Planning, Building and Licensing Services staff for the preparation of a comprehensive report and recommendation to Planning Committee. This means that after the meeting tonight, staff will be considering the comments made by the public in their further review of the applications. When this review is completed, a report will be prepared making a recommendation for action to this committee. The recommendation is typically to approve with conditions or to deny. This committee then makes a recommendation on the applications to City Council. City Council has the final say on the applications from the city's perspective. Following council decision, notice will be circulated in accordance with the Planning Act, and anyone with an interest in the matter may file an appeal. Interested persons are advised that if a person or public body does not make oral submissions at a public meeting or make written submissions before the bylaw is passed, the person or public body is not entitled to appeal the decision of council to the Ontario Municipal Board unless, in the opinion of the board, there are reasonable grounds to do so. Thanks. And we have 3 public meetings tonight. The first is an application for zoning bylaw amendment 1575 Westbrook Road. And we'll hear from the applicant this evening. Would you like to come up to the microphones? Up here, please. Yeah.
Okay, good evening. Staff and councillors. My name is Martin Berger from Groundwork Engineering, and I'm here on behalf of the owner, Walter Holsgrove, who is also attending the meeting. And we're here to discuss and present the proposal for 1575 Westbrook Road development, and it's a zoning bylaw amendment that we're applying for. So, first of all, the purpose is to provide you an overview of the following: the subject site, the proposed development, the zoning bylaw amendment, to amend the current uses of the subject lands that are zoned M16 special to facilitate the proposed development, and why these requested amendments are appropriate, and finally conclude with some remarks. The subject lands are at 1575 Westbrook Road, just to the north of Highway 401, and Westbrook Road is on the east side and bordered as well on the south by Smith Road. The property, as you see from this air photo, has been used by the owner for stockpiling of material. It's situated in an area that already has some industrial uses. You have the Lafarge Quarry and Cocoa Paving to the east, another contractor yard, as well as a transfer recycling yard to the north, some rural property to the east, or to the west, I should say, and some residential rural on the southwest corner. Here's just some views of the property up close. As you can see, there's some stockpiled material on site there. The proposed development is planned to be broken up into 3 phases, and the main portion of the development, the first phase, is a new processing facility and office and shop for the company that's doing that work, and in this case, Walter Holsgrove is part of that team that owns that business. There's also a communication tower to the south of the phase 1. That's Rogers Lease Communication Tower. The building that's proposed is a 2-part building. The front part, which you can see as an east elevation, will have a limestone type split face finish, and it will house the offices for the proponent, as well as a shop, which will be a steel frame and steel-sided building. The current property, as seen from this extract from Schedule 3B of the official plan, the lands are designated rural and environmental protection area. And it's the full intent that the environmental protection area that area is actually going to be maintained on the site. There's also the zoning for this particular piece is currently zoned M16 with a special for firewood processing only, is the only use allowed. You'll see the other uses it's almost created an industrial corridor here with other uses to the north and east of the property. The property is currently zoned M16, and the permitted uses, as I mentioned, are restricted to firewood processing only. So the proponent wishes, in order to not offend the zoning bylaw, requires that the following addition, that directly from the documentation, that notwithstanding the provisions of Section 24.1b, 24.2c, and so forth, hereof to the contrary, the lands are designated M16 on Schedule A. Hereto shall be permitted to use as a fire processing yard, a transportation and cartage yard, a contractor's yard, a business office, soil processing facility, service garage, and a public use in accordance with Section 518. So what we're trying to do, what the owner's trying to do, is to add the uses that are actually in the official plan for this area, this particular property, back to the property itself. So the plan development will connect to existing utilities at the property line, Storm, sanitary, and water services are available on site. A Hydro-G study was completed, and we were able to service the site with on-site well. There's also a septic system that's been designed to handle the effluent from the particular development. This particular property the development also meets the landscape, open space, parking, and access requirements. A noise feasibility impact study was completed, and a noise limit setback of 150 meters from the nearest receptor, which are some of those rural homes to the southwest corner, will be followed. There are no foreseen impacts or hazards, including the reduction of privacy and traffic. In this particular case, there's a Schedule 3D, Special Provision Number 2, Section 318.2 of the official plan, and this particular development meets all the criteria. These include the size of the particular development, the minimum size requirements, loading zones will be screened with landscape berms. There's also the limits of the EPA. So that currently there's some EPA on the property, and those are going to be designated in consultation with CRCA. There'll be a 30-meter setback that will be maintained and left undisturbed. And the intent is to use a portion of it for stormwater management, or it can be used. There's an existing pond on the southwest corner of the property. The zoning bylaw amendment will allow for more diverse uses of the property, and the development will have land use similar to the adjacent properties operating in the area. Just to conclude, we believe that the proposal meets the objectives of the growth policies of the OP. The proposal will not contradict the intent of rural land use designation that's outlined in the OP, and there's a portion of the property that's designated EPA, and it will remain undeveloped with required setbacks. The zoning bylaw amendment will allow permitted uses on the M16 zone that will allow for a contractor's yard, a business office, transport and cartage yard, soil processing facility, and a service garage. That's it.
Thank you very much. Could I hear from staff, please?
Certainly. Through you, Madam Chair. The application was circulated as per the requirements of the Planning Act, and to date, I have received no written correspondence with respect to the subject proposal.
Thank you. Questions from the committee? Councillor Allen?
Thank you, and thank you for your presentation. It seems that you're sort of following the intent of what we're trying to do in the rural area by clustering similar uses together and separating them. I did receive a phone call and from a neighbor worried about noise, and I spoke to you about this earlier. I just wanted to get a little more detail on how you and your client will work to ensure that if there are any increased noise from additional equipment use on the property, how you might mitigate that to be a good neighbor.
Right. The noise impact study indicated that we should implement some berms to help mitigate some of the noise. And on the site plan control document, or on the site plan, that's more evident than what you can see from these drawings. And that's the intent, is to put some berming in place that will help mitigate that. The study indicated where the best locations for that would be. I was on site when the consultant actually went around and did measuring during some of the processing that had been going on the site. And he indicated where potential locations were. So we'll implement those.
Thank you. That's all for me.
Councillor Neal?
Thank you. I just had a couple of quick questions, one of which I did buttonhole you before the meeting about. I just wanted some assurance that for the soil storage, that what we're talking about is clean topsoils. We won't at any time have brownfield soils that are being aerated on site, those would be hauled to a different site, better licensed for that. Is that accurate?
Thank you. Yes, that's correct. So this processing facility will only deal with clean topsoil that's that's been picked up locally, actually, from a number of different construction sites, usually by the proponent themselves. And for that material to leave the site, it will have been generally has been tested and cleaned, or given the clean bill of health to be moved to a facility that isn't licensed.
Great, thank you. And my last question, and this may be to staff as much as to you, it seems to me that in previous approvals on other sites, we typically, and maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong on this, but we typically discourage designation of EPA lands for stormwater control. Is that a accurate statement? Or I know that that's been the case in some specific proposals that have come forward from other proponents. So
yeah, we wouldn't. So I'll clarify that. We're not using it for stormwater control. It's just that the stormwater, because that's the low point in the site at the southwest corner, the stormwater from the site, from the development, will be controlled both in quantity and quality before it gets there, but it will have to eventually go through the EPA.
and that's the existing reality of stormwater on site
Yes.
currently, right?
That's
so
correct.
There's no plan for stormwater pond or anything like that that will go into the EPA land.
So currently, the design that we've implemented is some storm control that's upstream, and that it meets the guidelines as required by the staff here before it gets into the EPA.
Look forward to that being addressed in the final report that comes
Yes.
forward. Thank you.
Councillor Osanek?
Through you, Madam Chair, I just have a question about garbage and waste. So with the permitted use of a contractor's yard, is that going to give a lot of waste onto the site, or will everything be easily contained? I know we're having a lot of problems with 1709 Westbrook Road, 2 over from you. So
Right.
if you drive up Westbrook Road, you know what I'm
Yes.
talking about?
Yes.
And I don't want to see the same thing happen with your site.
Right. The site, so the material that's used on site and processed on site is topsoil, clay soils. There may be some rock that gets screened out of it, and that material will be processed on site and then gets used throughout the city and other projects. So the waste that is generated from that will, the waste is usually organic waste. So from topsoil, you might get some root growth, and it will be. Currently, it's meant to. They're filling in part of the site and on other phases. So some of that waste material gets used as fill material.
Thank you. I'm good with organic waste. Thank you.
Okay.
Seeing no other questions from the committee, I'll now open this to the public. If there are any members of the public wish to speak, we have a microphone on this side and one on that side? And seeing none, I'll just double check the committee. And thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. With that, I'll close that public meeting for Westbrook Road, and we will move on to the next one. Application for official plan and zoning bylaw amendment 1572 Sunnyside Road.
Okay. Good evening, Madam Chair, committee members, staff, and members of the public. My name is Marco Cekic, and I'm a land use planner with McIntosh Perry. McIntosh Perry is the agent for the Cataraqui Region Conservation Authority with respect to the subject official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment before you. Now, I am a little under the weather tonight, so if I'm not clear, just let me know, and I'll try and make myself a little more clear.
Actually, maybe if you could push the microphone a little bit closer.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay, so we'll begin with just describing the location of the subject lands. So the lands that are subject to this official plan and zoning bylaw amendment are located at 1572 Sunnyside Road and are located within the Little Cataraqui Creek Conservation Area. The conservation area is municipally known as 1641 Perth Road and is bounded by Highway 401, Perth Road, Brook Road, and Sunnyside Road. As you can see, located by the star, those are the subject lands. So some of the surrounding land uses. So the majority of the surrounding land uses are open space or conservation uses, and that's largely as a result of its location within the conservation area. However, as you can see on the slide, to the west of the site, there's some rural residential uses and also some agricultural uses in the form of crop fields. Now we'll start with the proposal. The proposal for 1572 Sunnyside Road includes severing a 2.82 hectare residential lot, which is improved with a single detached dwelling, and that's known as the Powley House, and a barn, and the barn is quite dilapidated. The current OP designation and zoning do not permit the new lot to be used for residential purposes, and therefore an official plan and zoning bylaw amendment are required. And a consent application has also been filed concurrently with these two applications. So now we'll go with some of the policy context, and we'll begin with the provincial policy statement. So it's our belief the proposal is consistent with the matters of provincial interest as expressed in the 2014 provincial policy statement, as it will first promotes optimal use of existing infrastructure. So it's already has access off of Sunnyside Road, and there is private on-site services which are to remain. It supports healthy, integrated, and viable rural areas by ensuring the proposal is consistent with the rural character of the area. So around it, there are rural residential lots, as illustrated on one of the previous slides. It promotes the protection of natural heritage features as demonstrated in the EIS that was submitted with the applications. And that EIS noted that the proposal would not have negative impacts on natural heritage features or their ecological functions. And we'll move on to the city official plan. So the subject lands are currently designated open space. which doesn't permit residential lot creation, requiring the official plan amendment to redesignate the lands to rural area. It's our opinion that the proposal meets the intent and purpose of the city's official plan, as it promotes the rural character of the area. Again, archaeological resources in the area will not be impacted. The client has agreed to a development agreement that will be registered on title. Should any site disturbances occur, that a detailed archaeological investigation will occur. And that, of course, will bind future owners. Detached dwellings are permitted in the rural area. And again, that EIS has demonstrated the proposal will not have negative impacts on the natural heritage features or their ecological function. And the site, there's no site or building alteration proposed, and therefore heritage resources are not anticipated to be impacted. And I will turn to the zoning bylaw 76-26. And again, as you can see on the slides, the black star illustrates the approximate location of the lands. And again, you can see they're zoned open space. So again, as you can see from the previous slide, much of the area around the subject lands was zoned A1, so that's restricted agriculture. And we felt that therefore that was an appropriate zone for these lands. The lot has been designed to ensure that it complies with the provisions, all the provisions of the A1 zone, so minimum acreage, minimum lot area, minimum lot frontage, etc. And we'll move to the justification for the official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment. So the proposal will recognize the existing dwelling and ensure its compliance with the official plan and zoning bylaw amendment. So the Powley House and the barn have been in existence for many years, and they've been treated and used as a residence, rented out by the CRCA, again, for many, many years. So this will recognize that existing use as it's always been and put it in conformity with the OP and zoning bylaw. The EIS has demonstrated that the proposal will not negatively impact the natural heritage features or their ecological function. And that's very important as the site is within the conservation area. Obviously, many heritage features in the area. Again, there is no site alteration or building alteration proposed. And as we had just discussed, we propose a designation and zone that is in keeping with the surrounding land uses. So there are those rural residential areas in the area. So the supporting studies that were submitted with the applications were in the environmental impact statement, which I've mentioned quite a few times, and as well as the planning rationale and justification report. And just to conclude, so the proposal is consistent with the 2014 provincial policy statement. The proposal satisfies the intent of the official plan. Rezoning the lands is appropriate and will meet the requirements of the A1 zone, and the development represents good land use planning. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll ask for comments from staff, please.
Through you, Madam Chair, the notice requirements as per the Planning Act have been met for this application, and we have received no formal written correspondence to date.
Thanks very much. Questions from the committee? Councillor Neal?
I'll defer to the district councillor who was putting his hand up.
Councillor Allen.
Thank you for your presentation and for soldiering through. Please, stay out of the outer circle when you leave. But most people would think to zone it as rural residential. It's an existing use, except for the farm there. And I wonder if your client or you anticipate any conflicts between the surrounding conservation area and any future agricultural uses that might be used in this new zone if we go with the A1 zone going forward as proposed.
I don't think there's likely to be, well, I don't think we have any concerns with respect to that. I don't know how viable that barn is anymore, and the size of the 2.8 hectares won't lead to much agricultural use. So I understand the barn is quite dilapidated and deteriorating on a daily basis. So yeah.
So you're saying today's storm won't be helping things for the value of the barn?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
Today's weather isn't going to help the barn's state. I have one other quick question, which is there, with this rezoning, will there be the ability for the future owner to sever a parcel of that off, or will that have to stay as an intact parcel?
To sever the severed land, sorry? It would be highly unlikely. The minimum lot area is 2 hectares, and we're proposing 2.82, so it would be a drastic reduction in size.
And Councillor Neal?
Yes, my only question has to do with the farmhouse, which, having seen a picture of it, it looks like it's probably a 19th century stone farmhouse. So it would have some heritage significance, and I appreciate that there are no current plans. I'm just curious if it's listed within the city heritage listing, and if not, that might be something worthwhile, even if we aren't looking at it getting designation. At least having it listed would allow some protection of the building from a heritage perspective.
Director Agnew?
Thank you, Madam Chair. So I don't have the answer to that right off the top of my head, but I can commit that we'll definitely look into it and make sure that it's part of our work going forward.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Any other questions from the committee? Then I will open it to the floor. Are there any members of the public who wish to comment or question this proposal? And seeing none again, I'd like to thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you.
And I will close this public meeting, and I'm now going to hand the meeting over to Councillor Neal, as I have a conflict for the next public meeting. Thank you.
And it has nothing to do with her being a gambler. So our next public meeting has to do with some housekeeping that we need to do with the OP in defining casino gaming facility. So I'll allow our staff to present the compelling case for this.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee, ladies and gentlemen. Staff are here this evening to present a city-initiated amendment to all 5 of the main zoning bylaws for the city, specifically to include a definition of casino gaming facility. The definition proposed is any building developed and used for the purpose of providing slot machine or table game wagering or betting authorized and licensed by the province of Ontario. This is the same definition that is currently in the official plan. Including the definition in all 5 of the zoning bylaws, what that will do is it will make the use distinctive from any other type of entertainment, commercial, or recreational type uses in the zoning bylaw. It is not going to be listed as a permitted use in any of the zones in any of the zoning bylaws. It's just the definition that's being added to the 5 bylaws. And therefore, if someone wishes to propose a casino gaming facility, they would be required to do a zoning bylaw amendment as well as an official plan amendment in order to do that. Just as a very condensed background summary as to what led us to this point tonight with the amendment, the city has been reviewing the issue of casinos from a land use perspective since 2012. There was a gaming facility policy and regulations study that was completed in January of 2013, and following that, council had directed staff to amend the official plan for the city to include policies on controlling casinos and specifically to not permit them in the central business district. That official plan amendment was appealed to the Ontario Municipal Board, and a settlement was reached late last year in November. At the time that the appeal was being considered, there was also the referendum question with respect to a casino in Kingston that was part of the 2014 municipal election. So there was a 2/3 no response on that question. So following that outcome, council had asked staff to outline options that the city could use to not permit a casino in Kingston, to be in keeping with the referendum results. So staff in May of 2015 prepared a report to council which outlined 4 options. The approach that was recommended by staff and subsequently approved by council last May was to require site-specific land use approvals and to use the zoning bylaws to not permit a casino gaming facility in any zone. This approach was recommended as it was noted that municipalities can use their planning documents to control land use, but we can't use them to do blanket prohibitions on specific uses. So once the official plan amendment, the appeal to that was settled late last year, that left us with this final piece to meet the commitment we made last May to council to also include the definition in each of the zoning bylaws. So the proposed zoning bylaw amendment is consistent with the approach in the official plan. And as I noted before, there would be an official plan amendment would also be needed as well as a rezoning for anyone that would be proposing a casino gaming facility. I just wanted to cover briefly what the proposed amendment doesn't apply to. The definition that's in the official plan and proposed for the zoning bylaws was very carefully crafted in consultation with the Alcohol and Gaming Commission of Ontario. It specifically references slot machines and table games because those are the exclusive purview of casinos, as well as some racetracks with respect to the slot machines. So the way that the definition has been drafted, it does not apply to any type of charitable gaming that's permitted. So that includes your traditional bingo halls, even if they now have some forms of different types of electronic gaming, such as I think some of them are called taptics. It also doesn't apply to any other type of charitable raffles or lotteries that the municipality is authorized to license or any other types that are permitted by the Alcohol and Gaming Commission. It also certainly doesn't apply to any kind of online gaming or the sale of lottery or scratch tickets, which are controlled by the Ontario Lottery and Gaming Corporation and regulated by the Alcohol and Gaming Commission. Notice for the public meeting was given in accordance with the Planning Act. There was a full advertisement in the Whig Standard on March 8th, as well as an additional courtesy notice in the Whig Standard. And any comments that are received this evening will be addressed in a comprehensive report that will be presented back to the committee at a future meeting date. To date, we have had one inquiry by phone with respect to the proposed amendment, and there was one formal piece of correspondence in support of the amendment, which I believe is included with the tonight's agenda. And if there are any questions, I would certainly be happy to answer them.
So any questions from the committee? I just have one. We're about to, in my district, there's an off-site, track betting licensed under the provincial statute. That won't be affected by, I assume that won't be off-track betting won't be affected by this bylaw and amendment.
To my knowledge, no. I can certainly check with that specific example and address that
If
in
you
the
could.
comprehensive report. But if they have obtained a license with the Alcohol and Gaming Commission, then no, that would be outside of this.
That's great.
Yeah.
Thank you. Seeing no, any members of the public like to speak to this issue? Seeing none, I think it's in part kind of housekeeping to make it legal what we've already decided to do and what the referendum helped us decide what to do. So I appreciate your work on this. Thank you. And I will tag team the chair back to the chair. And I will now officially close the public meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now we will begin the business portion of our meeting, and I'll call the meeting to order and ask for an approval of the agenda. Moved by Councillor Neal, seconded by Councillor Allen. All those in favor? And that's carried. Confirmation of the minutes. We have two sets of minutes, February 18th. So could we do that one first? Councillor Neal, Councillor Osanek. Questions, changes? All those in favor? Thank you. That's carried. And minutes of March the 3rd. Moved by Councillor Allen, seconded by Councillor Turner. Errors or omissions? All those in favor? And that's carried. Disclosure of pecuniary interest. I didn't find a little sheet, but I'll say it. I declare Liz Schell disclosure of conflict of interest as my son is employed by Ontario Lottery and Gaming. And we have no delegations, briefings. The business portion, the first one is application for zoning bylaw amendment 462 Barry Street. And we have a staff recommendation. Would anyone like to move it? Councillor Turner, seconded by Councillor Osanek. Questions of staff? Then I will call the question. All those in favor? Thank you. That one's carried. And the second is application for zoning bylaw amendment 169 Union Street. Moved by Councillor Turner, seconded by Councillor Allen. Comments, questions? All those in favor? Thank you. That's carried. And part C is application for draft plan of subdivision and zoning bylaw amendment 2939 Creekford Road, Phase 2 and 3. And moved by Councillor Turner, seconded by Councillor Osanek. Questions? Councillor Allen?
Thank you. And this is I'm just sort of looking at this. We've moved along in terms of how we've anticipated that this area would develop through our official plan and through the secondary planning processes. However, I wanted to encourage staff and perhaps the developers to take a look at that corridor where we're putting in an increase in density, which is great, and when we have that density and we want to have that transit supportive density, we also want to have receptors in the neighborhood for people who tend to be on foot, either getting off transit or walking around. And we have school and a park in the larger plan of this area. And one of the things that I'd like to see, especially along Cat Woods or near the park, would be the opportunity for mixed use. I'm not looking for a downtown or a hamlet. I'm looking for a node or a corridor, not a corridor, but a node or area where we might be able to consider building a coffee shop with some apartments on top, or a corner store, or something that if we're asking people to walk, they need to be able to walk to something. And if they're riding the bus and we're building this community with the idea that they're going to be, and that we don't know if there's what our transit plan is going to do, but if we are building this with that kind of density, we're getting far enough away once you get to Cat Woods from Princess Street, from other places, that we want to encourage that kind of building along, especially along the main roads. And so I'm not going to press the point here because I think there's going to be future opportunities to continue this conversation. I also think that the current secondary plan doesn't ask for it in a direct way. I don't know if staff have any comments in terms of this, but when I'm looking at the overall plan, I'm seeing the potential for more opportunities of these kind of mixed uses that might benefit the neighborhood and the neighborhood uses.
Planner Adams?
Yeah, through you, Madam Chair. Just to add to that, what you mentioned, this area is subject to a secondary plan. On Exhibit E of the report, it actually shows the kind of subject property and the surrounding areas. There is a district commercial designation to the east. I've quickly scaled it off. It's probably 250, 300 meters away. So under a 5-minute walk. And that designation does actually allow some of those commercial uses with coffee shop, etc., and potential for residential above. So it's not allowed in the designations of this application, which is low density and medium density residential, but there is that area within this wider neighborhood. As you mentioned, it's a little bit further away from Princess Street, but that's kind of in a central area where there's potentially going to be the schools just to the north of it and then the community park north of that. So there is an area within the neighborhood designated for those uses, but your wider comments are certainly noted and we'll look at that for future. Thank you.
Other questions? Then I will call, we did get it moved and seconded, yes. I will call the question. All those in favor? Thank you, and that's carried. That concludes our applications. There are no motions, notices of motion, other business, one piece of correspondence, and the next meeting is April the 7th. That's in a week. Okay. Adjournment. Motion to adjourn, Councillor Neal, seconded by Councillor Turner. All those in favor? Great. Thank you very much. Okay, we are adjourned.